Good morning and good afternoon and good evening to everyone watching from wherever you are in the world, and thank you for joining the University of Melbourne and other universities as part of this international open house run by College Week Live. My name is Rhett Miller, and I'm one of the regional managers in charge of marketing and development for the University of Melbourne overseas. And I'm going to talk to you this evening a little bit about the university, and then after I've talked to you a little bit about the university, I'm going to turn it over to you to hear some questions from the audience that you may have about our institution. So for those of you watching, you're probably looking and considering a range of universities around the world. Some of you might be looking at universities in the US, some in the UK and elsewhere in Europe. But Australia is also a good option for you as a potential study destination. For those of you watching, Australia is often viewed, I think, as a destination which is associated with tourism, with sun, sea, sand, surf, but it is a country that is much more than that. Australia is a highly innovative and dynamic country. It is one of the world's top 20 economies. It has on offer 6 of the world's top 100 universities, and many of the great inventions that come in the modern age have come out of Australia. Many of you today maybe used Wi-Fi. What many of you wouldn't be aware is that was actually invented right here in Australia at one of our universities here. Google Maps, which you probably use on a day-to-day basis, is also an Australian invention. So Australia is a very dynamic and innovative place. Another reason why you might consider Australia as a study destination is the fact that it offers very generous post-study work rights for international students. If you come to Australia and undertake a degree of 2 years duration or more, you're guaranteed 2 years post-study work rights in Australia. If you do a Masters by Research, you're guaranteed 3 years, or a PhD 4 years. So Australia offers probably the most generous post-study work rights in the world. And whilst it is challenging finding a job as a student, as it is in many parts of the world, the Australian economy is relatively healthy compared to many other markets around the world. For example, Australia was the only OECD country that didn't go into recession following the global financial crisis, and we have an unemployment rate around 5%, which is quite low if you compare to the unemployment rates of the UK and Europe, and indeed the US. So there are a few reasons why you might consider Australia as a study destination rather than Europe and the UK and the US. But that's maybe enough about Australia. How about the University of Melbourne? So the University of Melbourne is Australia's top-ranked university in 3 of the 4 major international rankings, and it is also ranked 34th in the world. So it is really the premium institution in Australia If Australia had a Harvard or an Oxford, it would be the University of Melbourne. The university also ranks fairly highly in most discipline areas. It ranks either first or second in most discipline areas in Australia. And if you look at many of our graduate schools and the subject areas and how they rank, you'll find that they tend to rank within either the top 30 or top 20 worldwide. So it's certainly an institution that is right up there with some of the top institutions in Europe and the UK and indeed the US. The university itself is situated in Parkville, which is right next to the central business district, the very centre, the very heart of the city of Melbourne. And you can see, I think, with the image on your screen that the university is just right on the edge there behind those skyscrapers. So it's located in a very convenient place for students. It's easily accessible to the city via public transport options. There are trams that directly connect the university with the city, so you can get into the city within about 5 minutes on a tram, or indeed 10 minutes if you're walking. The university itself has a population of around 47,000 students from 120 countries. So in terms of the number of international students on campus, about 26% are international. So if you are an international student coming from elsewhere in the world, you certainly won't be alone. In fact, universities like Melbourne and other Australian universities are some of the most internationalised in terms of the number of international students they have of any universities in the world. So if you look at a lot of the US institutions, for example, the average number of international students they have is around 10 or 11% on average, whereas in Australia it tends to be around 25%. The university is of course situated in the city of Melbourne. Melbourne is considered the world's most livable city, according to The Economist, which has ranked Melbourne in that position for the last 3 years in a row. So Melbourne is widely considered to be a wonderful environment in which to live. Indeed, other Australian cities are too. Sydney and Perth are both ranked in the top 10 for that particular ranking also. The city is known very much for being the cultural capital of Australia. So many of the events and festivals which take place in Australia take place in the city of Melbourne. You might think of some of the big events that you see on your television screens that happen in Australia, like the Australian Open Tennis, the Formula One Grand Prix, the football finals. All of these tend to happen within the city of Melbourne. The city is also known for its European character as well. So this is directly contrasts with Sydney, which is known as, I guess, a more American city, whereas Melbourne is known more for its European character. Going back to the university, we have on campus really world-class facilities. Because the university is one of the wealthier institutions in the country. We are very, very fortunate to have excellent infrastructure at the institution. We have one of the largest academic collections in Australia. On campus is also a supercomputer which we had positioned here in association with IBM. Many of our graduate schools on campus are in brand spanking new buildings that have been created within the last 10 years. So when you do come to the university, I think you'll be quite impressed by the level of infrastructure that we have here. In addition to the main campus that we have in Parkville, if you are doing other programs in the areas of the arts, for example, we do have some other campuses. They are much smaller, and indeed 90% of the programs we run are taught at Parkville, but some are taught at these other campuses. And the other campus that we have in the arts precinct is right next to the National Gallery of Victoria and the State Theatre. So it's right smack bang in the place where I think a lot of students undertaking those fine art subjects would like to later work. In addition to that, we also have a campus in rural Victoria, or a couple of campuses in rural Victoria, for students who are looking at studying agriculture, horticulture, and veterinary science. For students who do come to Melbourne, there is a lot of opportunity to study overseas. We have 170 exchange partners in 39 countries, and because of Melbourne's rankings, those partners tend to be some of the most highly ranked universities in their own countries. A good example, some of you might be looking at studying in the US, or might be interested in studying in the US. Well, you can still do that if you do come to the University of Melbourne. For example, some of our exchange partners in the US include the UC schools, you've got Duke University, you've got Columbia, so you've got a wide variety of top Ivy Leagues which you could potentially go to in the US if you come to Melbourne. Similarly, there is a range of different top-ranked universities in Europe and the UK which you can look at as options, as well as within our own Asian region. So as part of those overseas experiences which are on offer, there is the potential to get funding from the university to do that if you meet a certain average, academic average. And we do, as a result of that funding and a very well organised program, send more students overseas to study than any other Australian institution. So that's something well worth considering if you look at studying at the university. The quality of the academic staff at the university is really very, very outstanding. The university is Australia's largest research organisation. So we get more research funding now than any other organisation, including the Australian federal government. And as a result, we are able to attract the best researchers and teachers to deliver our programs. Some examples of some of the remarkable, I guess, staff we have on campus. Peter Doherty is a Nobel Prize winner for medicine and a specialist in immunology, who is taught on campus. And we also have on campus Professor David Caroli, who teaches in the area of meteorology. David Caroli is also a Nobel laureate. He was on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change together with Al Gore, which won the Nobel Prize several years ago for its groundbreaking research on climate change and indeed shaping world opinion on climate change. So you're going to be in a very, very good position in terms of dealing with some of the finest academic minds in Australia and indeed around the world in your classes. In terms of how classes are structured here, generally what you will be doing is attending either a seminar style class maybe once or twice a week, and then you'll also have a smaller tutorial class additional to that, in which you will discuss the work you've done in the seminar. If you're in the sciences, that tutorial may take the form of a lab in which you'll undertake experiments that you've discussed in the lectures. For many students, the obvious desire in studying university is to get a really, really good job at the end of your studies, and Melbourne serves that purpose very well. The university is ranked 10th in the world for employability of our graduates. That puts Melbourne up there with MIT and Cambridge in terms of how its graduates are viewed by employers. What happened is that several years ago, QS began doing a survey in which it asked employers to rate graduates from different universities according to their skills and attributes. And Melbourne graduates have consistently come out in the top 10 in that survey over the course of the last 4 years, which is quite an outstanding result, and shows, I guess, the pedigree with which Melbourne graduates are held, both regionally in Asia and across the world. So, in terms of potentially delivering your positive career outcome, Melbourne is definitely a place that's right up there in terms of increasing your chances of a good career outcome. So you can see here a quote from one of our graduates who is now working at Deutsche Bank, the large merchant bank. We aim to hire the best talent, and University of Melbourne students demonstrate the profile of strong academic performance and extracurricular achievement that we look for. So you can see there that it's very, very apparent that this is what employers want. So one of the reasons why we have such good career outcomes for our students is the Careers and Employment Service that we have. So our Careers and Employment Service regularly runs seminars throughout the year for students, giving them advice on how to draft a resume, how to draft a letter of application, interview skills. They bring in recent graduates of the university who are working in different industry sectors to talk about their experiences, through the application process. The University Careers Service also has an online database of potential career opportunities that may exist in terms of internships, in terms of part-time work, and indeed in terms of graduate positions when you finish your studies. So I do suggest, if you do come to the university, to please make use of that service. It's one of the reasons why I think Melbourne graduates have such wonderful career outcomes. One of the things I think which sets Melbourne apart maybe to several other universities in Australia is the fact that we really emphasize the need for students to be independent in their learning. So I mentioned before the structure of the classes, where we have a large seminar and then students will either go into the lab or tutorials to implement and discuss what's been taught in the large seminar. With all of that, your hand won't be held for any of it. You will be expected to prepare readings for each of your tutorials, or indeed, prepare for your lab experiments if you're in the sciences. All of this will be is very, very much expected. However, our academics do have their doors open if you would like to meet with them, if you require any help in any area. And also there are various student services, particularly for international students, if you do need help with anything. We have an international student services area that can provide advice if you're having trouble academically. They can also help you with visa issues if you're having visa issues. The university has a medical service that can help you with any counselling problems, any counselling you may need, and indeed any health and medical problems that you may have. Getting back to the learning side of things, when students start their course at the university, we give each student 20 minutes with a course advisor to help them work out their course plan for the duration of their studies. So we ensure that all students are well prepared in terms of knowing what may be the prerequisites that they require if they want to go into graduate study after doing an undergraduate program, or indeed any prerequisite subjects they need to go in a particular stream in any graduate program that they may be doing. So we do ensure that all students get an appropriate level of service when they come to the university in terms of guiding them read their course. So I mentioned briefly before the services for international students. In terms of the detail of those, the International Student Support Area runs academic skills workshops and English language assistance for international students. They provide pre-departure and arrival briefings for students. So in several countries, those pre-departure and arrival briefings will be physically provided to you, where from countries where we get a lot of students. For countries where we get fewer students, those briefings will be provided online. We also provide free airport pickup for our students, for our international students. And also there's a whole range of events and activities in your first couple of weeks on campus to help you meet your new classmates. For example, in our orientation week, all our clubs and societies set themselves up on the university's North Quarter on the South Lawn, and you can go and join any of those clubs and societies and start making new friends from the beginning of your experience here. For those undergraduate students watching, before you even arrive, we have a program called Seek, Meet, Connect, which is an online program which we invite all students who've received an offer to the university to join. And in that online program, you can chat to students from your own country and from other countries to, I guess, start making connections even before you get to Melbourne to help you establish yourself at the university. For many international students too, all of their countries will have their own clubs and societies which they might be able to join. For example, there's a Hong Kong Students Association, there's a Taiwan Students Association, there's student associations there's a Spanish Students Association, a Russian Students Association. So there's these different clubs which students from different countries can join, and they all have Facebook pages as well. And if you join those particular clubs before you arrive via their Facebook page, it's a good way to make connections before you get to the university. So in terms of the actual curriculum that's offered by Melbourne, Melbourne is different to many other Australian universities in that it started offering a program that was very different from the traditional British model which Australian universities had in 2008. It moved to something called the Melbourne model. And the reason for that is we were getting a lot of feedback from employers who were saying, well, you know, it's all very nice for you to produce graduates who have a major in a certain area, a distinct specialisation, but we want graduates that are able to respond to constantly changing environments, are able to deal with a whole range of different problems. So we want graduates that are also more broad in their thinking. So what Melbourne did is it changed the structure of its undergraduate degrees from the traditional degree where you just did, you know, say for example, a Bachelor of Science and majored in physics. And it said, okay, so yes, students, we still want students to have that specialisation, but we also want them to be looking outside their core study area. And as such, we make it compulsory for all our undergraduate students to do up to 25% of their subjects from outside their core study area. So if you are doing the Bachelor of Science, for example, majoring in physics, you would be expected to take 25% of your subjects from outside the sciences area, from another faculty. So you might choose to do, I don't know, some subjects in Spanish, some subjects in you know, English literature, in business. You can mix and match to create, I guess, your own broader degree out of that 25% component. After doing one of those undergraduate degrees, those 3-year degrees, students can then leave the university and go and seek employment, or go on to one of our specialist graduate programs. And we offer a range of graduate programs at our many different graduate schools, a whole range of different professional degrees: law, medicine, teaching, engineering, veterinary science, physiotherapy, and these degrees have full accreditation in Australia for you to be able to potentially practice in that area, and also accreditation in other parts of the world. For example, our engineering qualification, our Master of Engineering, is accredited in both Europe under EURACE, which is the accreditation body for engineers there, and in the United States under the Washington Accord, which is the accreditation for North America for engineers. So I guess, you've really got a lot of different options to choose from, and very fortunate that many of those are internationally recognised for you to be able to then go on and work around the world with the various programs that we have on offer. So you can see up here a bit of a map of what I've just explained to you. These are our different undergraduate degrees. You can see there's agriculture, arts, biomedicine, commerce, environments, fine arts, music, oral health and science. And within those there are many majors you can do. You are required to do at least one major in your undergraduate degree, but you can also do two if you so choose. Then, as I mentioned, some students go straight from that onto their career. Others will go and do a graduate coursework degree, and still others may do an honours year and then go on and do graduate research. So we've got here some sample course plans. If I click on science, we can have a look at some of the plans here. I'll just see if that works. I'll be able to click through it here. So, for example, in science, if we go through, you can see the subjects highlighted in blue here are subjects which lead to a particular major in computing and software systems. The subjects in pink are elective subjects which can be chosen from anywhere in the sciences. And then these subjects down the side here in purple are those breadth subjects, those 25% of subjects I spoke about. So you can see that really it's very, very diverse. I mean, this student is majoring in computing and software systems, but also doing subjects in Aboriginal languages, in the grammar of English, in intercultural communication, so a range of different linguistic subjects also. In the student's final year, they do these green subjects which round out their major and complete their major in their particular area. So it really does give you a lot of freedom in your undergraduate qualification. So in addition to those bachelor degrees you see there, students at undergraduate level can also do one of the diplomas we offer. These diplomas add an extra year onto your 3-year undergraduate degree and enable you to have, I guess, the equivalent of another major in another area that might interest you. So you could be doing any of our bachelor's degrees and still do a diploma in music, for example, or a diploma in a language that you might be interested in. There are a whole range of potential options for you outside of the just doing a core 3-year bachelor degree. If you do have another interest, you can potentially add on this extra year and look at another subject area also. I mentioned before those graduate areas that we also have in terms of doing a graduate coursework degree. Our graduate coursework degrees range from 2 to 4 years, and you can see the various options listed there. Many of our graduate schools, as I mentioned before, rank in the top 30 worldwide, so or indeed the top 20, depending on which graduate school. So certainly some worthwhile programs there for consideration. In terms of entry requirements for international students at undergraduate level, you can see here the entry requirements for our IB and indeed A levels. These are two very common, I guess, entry pathways for undergraduate students to the university. Also keep in mind though, we recognise a whole range of undergraduate entry pathways from across the world. And if the entry pathway isn't recognised, you can look at coming to our foundation studies provider, Trinity, to do 1 year to get into the university. But in a whole lot of cases, your particular high school qualification will be recognised for entry to the university. Students are obviously required also to meet English language requirements. The requirements that we have up here are for our undergraduate courses, though for many of our graduate courses these requirements are the same with a few exceptions. Do check the website to make sure that you are meeting the right English language requirements. The general requirement is an IELTS score overall of 6.5 with no individual bands below 6.0. We also accept TOEFL, Pearson and Cambridge English certificate as well. Please make sure that you do check the university's website, to the course search site, to look at what are the entry requirements to the university and indeed the English language requirements also. If you don't meet the English language requirement, one thing to keep in mind is that there is the possibility for many of our programs to do a bridging program of 10 weeks duration, which when completed will give you entry to the university. So if you do have an IELTS of 6.0, less than the 6.5 required, you can look at admission to that bridging program, which is taught at the Hawthorn English Language Centre. So I would recommend that you do go to the university website to get more information about that. Many students ask about the possibility of fees and scholarships to the university. You'll see here that there is a range of scholarships at undergraduate level which we offer, but not shown here. But what is definitely the case is that we do offer scholarships also at the graduate research level and the graduate coursework level. At the undergraduate level, we offer 50 international undergraduate fee remission scholarships. 10 are 100% fee remission, 10 are 50% fee remission, and 30 are one-off payments of 10,000 Australian dollars, which would be roughly a third of your fees, or slightly less than a third of your fees. Also, for those students looking at doing the Bachelor of Commerce degree, there are a range of commerce scholarships as well on offer. In terms of graduate coursework, there are a handful of what are known as IPCAs, International Postgraduate Coursework Awards, for students. And at the graduate research level, there are a more generous range of scholarships for the university, which cover both tuition fee remission and stipend. In fact, there's about 450 at the research level. So if you are a top performing research student, please do consider the university, because there are a lot of funding options for you at that research level. That scholarships, in terms of fees at the university, fees are changing every year, so I do recommend looking, and then they differ obviously for program, so I do recommend looking at the university website for details, read those fees. Generally, they range from about $25,000 to nearly $50,000 per annum, depending on the particular program you'll be doing. At undergraduate level, the fees are from about the $25,000 mark to about the $38,000 mark. For other programs, it can be considerably higher at the graduate level. But do check the university website for details, read those fees. Accommodation is a big question for international students considering the university, and we have a range of accommodation options both on and off campus. There are 11 residential colleges at the University of Melbourne. These admit both international and domestic students. Students at the colleges get their meals provided, they get their own room, they'll share a bathroom with 6 to 8 people, and they'll have regular dinners in the dining hall with other students. One of the features of the colleges is that there is an academic tutorial program that is run by the colleges in your subject area. So there are residential tutors, so academics who live at the colleges, who will run seminars in the evening beyond your traditional classes, your normal university classes, which may be able to assist you with your studies in your chosen field. So that's one of the very, very key benefits of being at one of the university's residential colleges. The colleges also have their own social activities. They have their own balls. They have their own intra-college competitions in both sport and in debating. They run regular theatrical productions. So if you can afford it, the college is a really, really wonderful experience, which I highly recommend. Fees for the colleges are at around the 18,000 to 20,000 Australian dollar mark but with that, as I mentioned, you get all your meals provided. Other accommodation options that we have are student apartments that are run by private companies which are very nearby the university. These apartments have been purpose-built for students, and whilst you don't get your meals provided and you have to cook for yourself, you do have the option of either having your own room or potentially sharing a room. These particular apartments are slightly cheaper than the colleges and will cost you around 15,000 Australian dollars per year. But they are very secure, and they are a good option for students, particularly in their first year of university. They also have often have facilities like a swimming pool and gym and things like that, which are quite useful for students. The other option, of course, is to rent your own place. If you are considering this option, what you must do is ensure that you arrive at the in Australia at least 4 weeks prior to you commencing your studies. Do not, under any circumstances, try and book a place over the internet. That is different, of course, if you're looking at one of those student apartment options, or alternately the residential colleges. You can book those in advance, and indeed then show up when you commence your studies. However, if you are just finding your own place to live, you must arrive 4 weeks before the semester commences and search and inspect places yourself. If you go to the university's housing website, you will see there is a database called ComNet, which you can use to search for particular housing options that are out there. And there's also links to other websites which are popular housing databases for you to search for potential places to rent here. In terms of the cost of renting, if you rent your own place in a shared house in Melbourne, you'll be looking, if you live far away from the centre, around maybe $160, $170 per week, right up to, if you live close to the university in the centre, around $250 per week. One of the things which you might like to consider if you do look to find your own house in coming to Melbourne is trying homestay whilst you are looking at different accommodations. The university works with a homestay provider, the Australian Homestay Network, on placing students with an Australian household where they get a room and meals as part of that homestay, and the students can then stay in that particular arrangement for a short term in order to have enough time to look for a place to live. So that's a really good option as sort of a temporary accommodation until you find a place to rent. Similarly, there are some students who choose to stay in homestay for longer periods, and you can do that as well. All of this information that I've given you is, and indeed information about different suburbs which you might want to live in, is available on the university's housing website. So I'd recommend going on that and having a good look at the information there. In terms of how you apply to the university, it's actually reasonably straightforward insofar as you can go online and apply directly, or alternately you can apply through one of our agents overseas. So if you go to the university's Future Students page, which you see on the screen here, you'll be able to link through to the list of representatives that we have around the world, and there'll be one possibly near you, which you can go to, who can help you with every stage of the application process, in most cases without a fee being charged. And then there's also the option for you, as I said, to apply directly via that website. Please make sure before you apply that you do meet the entry requirements, that you have the relevant subject prerequisites for the course you're looking at, that you meet the English language requirements. And I'd recommend, if you are going through one of our agents, that you discuss your application with that particular agent, so you know, they can assess whether you would be a suitable candidate for entry to the university. Similarly, if you're watching and you're in a high school, please discuss the fact that you're looking at Melbourne with your school counsellor, who might be able to give you some further guidance on the university. So in addition to those entry requirements, English language requirements, you also need to think about your student visa. Legally in Australia, I'm not allowed to give student visa advice. However, if you go to the Australian Department of Immigration and Citizenship website, you can get some advice on different visas. In most cases, you will be applying online. And that can be quite a quick, or quite, sorry, not quick necessarily quick, but quite a straightforward process. You also need to think about obviously accommodation, and go to that housing website and think about what the actual cost of living will be for you whilst you are here in Australia. So you've got up on the screen now the key dates for you to remember in terms of the application process to the university. If you are looking at applying for an undergraduate place at the university, we will take applications right up until the end of December for entry in February. Similarly, if you're looking at entering in July, we'll take applications right up until the end of May, early June. Okay. If you are looking at graduate study, and that is a graduate coursework study, we'll take applications up until end of October for study commencing in February, or indeed up until the end of April for study commencing in July. The university also runs a virtual fair twice a year in May and October, where you can chat with all our staff, and we run this through the College Week Live site here, so you will get information about that via your email in the future. The university's main semester dates are from February to June and from July to November. So if you would like some more information beyond the questions which I'll now answer, please go online to our Future Students site, and you see the web address there in that Go Online box, and you'll get a whole range of information about the university. Or if you're interested in searching for our courses and what particular course options there might be, go to our course search site there. So without further ado, we'll go over to the questions from our audience who are watching. The first question is, hi, can I ask, am I able to study physics at Melbourne? Yes, you most definitely can. In our Bachelor of Science, if you go to the course search, you'll see that physics is one of the majors you can undertake in science. It's important that you look and consider the prerequisites, though, for the Bachelor of Science to make sure that you meet those for that particular course. Okay, just moving down the questions there. Hello, please can you tell me some information about business and accounting? Of course I can. So the university offers, and I'm not sure whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student, but The university does offer programs in accounting in both those areas. At undergraduate level, you can do the Bachelor of Commerce and major in accounting. That major in accounting can lead to CPA accreditation, so accreditation as a qualified accountant in Australia, and similarly CFA accreditation, which is the other accounting accreditation in Australia. At graduate level, we also offer a master's in the accounting field also. That is an option too if you are looking at accounting at that particular at graduate level. So the next question as we go down, does the university have any scholarships? Well, I have outlined them before, but I would recommend also going to the scholarships website to see more about the scholarships in detail on that particular website. Here we go. Got some other questions. Here's a good question here. Does the University of Melbourne affiliate with any Vietnamese universities? Well, in terms of institutions in Vietnam, I can actually have a look for you right now. If you just bear with me, I'll just do a search here. Okay, so just one moment. Whoops. Here we are, partners. So if we just go here to... So yes, we currently do have agreements with Hanoi Law University and Vietnam National University. We do have collaborations with universities in Vietnam. If you would like more information about that, please don't hesitate to contact the university via our Future Student site. If you go on there, there is a Contact Us portal, and you can send us an email if you want to get some further information on the particular agreements we have with those institutions. Okay. Okay, we've got a question here. If I am a second-year student in my home country, can I transfer to study at your university with an IELTS certificate? Okay, so if Melbourne does accept students who transfer from other institutions, it considers a number of factors if you are going to transfer. You can't just transfer based on your IELTS. The university will look at your GPA, your grade point average from the institution at which you've studied. They will look at the individual subjects you have studied to see whether you're going to get any credit if you come to Melbourne. And they will also look at the standard of the university at which you have studied to determine if it is an appropriate university to be recognised for transfer to the University of Melbourne. And the university will also obviously look at the English to make sure you meet the English language requirements, so have those IELTS requirements to transfer. So all those factors will be considered if you do transfer to the university. There is no guarantee that you will get credit for your transfer. So if you've done 1 year of a course at a particular university elsewhere, there's no guarantee that you'll get a year of credit if you come to Melbourne. That will be up to Melbourne and its academic staff to determine whether the subjects you've done previously are recognised. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we've got some other questions here. So we've got a question from students, which is, we're just trying to get this open. The question is, what if I am undecided about the course I want to do? Like I'm interested in architecture and computer engineering and not sure which program to go into. Well, this is a very good question. It's one of the benefits, I guess, of the model of education that we have here at Melbourne, insofar as when you're doing your 3-year undergraduate degree, there is the possibility for a lot of choice when you go on to graduate study at the university. So in this example, the student is interested in architecture and computing engineering. So the student might do a Bachelor of Environments and major in architecture in that particular program, but then also as part of their breadth in the Bachelor of Environments, undertake some computing subjects, so they keep themselves open to potentially doing a Master's in IT or Information Systems when they finish their Bachelor of Environments, or go in and do the Masters of Architecture. So I guess what's really good about the Melbourne model is it enables you to keep your options open until you finish your undergraduate degree. So you don't have to make that decision right when you finish high school in terms of what particular programs you choose to do. So I've got another question here about whether it's possible to study medicine at Melbourne. The answer to that is very much yes. If you are starting from undergraduate at Melbourne, you can either do the Bachelor of Biomedicine or Bachelor of Science at the university, and provided you complete the relevant prerequisites in those programs, you can then apply to the Melbourne Medical School to undertake the MD at the university. So that's definitely an option for you if you do one of those undergraduate degrees at the university, or alternately if you go to another university and undertake an undergraduate qualification in the sciences or biomedical sciences. You just need to make sure, and I recommend that everyone do this no matter what course they do, you go to the university's course search site, you make sure that you double check what the prerequisites are for the particular graduate course that you might be interested in. And if you are starting at the university, make sure that you talk to your course advisor about your particular study options. Okay? Okay, we've got another question here, I think, about, I'm not sure whether it relates to the city or the university, but the question is, what is unique about Melbourne? Well, I guess I'll start with the city. I mentioned before that Melbourne's very much considered the most European of Australian cities. It's known for its beautiful architecture and culture and the festivals and events going on. It's one of the most diverse cities in the world. 1 in 3 of the population in Melbourne is born overseas, and it was also home to a huge number of international students. So international education is one of the biggest areas of economic activity in Victoria, and which is the state in which Melbourne's based, and indeed in the city of Melbourne. And so I guess it's one of the things which makes our city quite special, that we have students from so many different cultures here, and we're very much an education city. In terms of the university, what makes the university very, very unique is that it is definitely the premier institution in Australia, and it is so internationalised. With a quarter of its students from overseas, when you sit in a classroom, you're getting opinions from different perspectives from around the world, which is fantastic, and not necessarily something that you'll experience at other universities. So that's about all we have time for the questions this evening and for the presentation. So thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to seeing you next time on College Week Live. Okay, good night.